Let's say you haven't done the pre-splitting thing and your data is a little bit messier, right? So you've got your shards tagged, you've sharded on something like a zip code, and you know that you want certain values to go to New York, you've got certain values you want to go to New Jersey, and so on, all the way down the list of states. But you already had the zip code data in there before you sharded, so when you actually look at your data, you notice that you've got a chunk that actually spans multiple ranges, unfortunately, right? So you've kind of split your things up and you've got them tagged correctly. You didn't quite do it properly. So let's make up zip code values. I'm not going to actually try and do this properly here. Let's say 100 to 200 is in New York, 200 to 300 is supposed to be New Jersey. And then you've got a chunk down here, and the chunk is described as having, you know, a minimum of 150 and a max of 220 on a chart key. So it spans both of these ranges. Yeah. So how does the balancer make a decision about where to put this chunk? Which one of the tagged shards should it go into? The New York shard or the New Jersey shard? And the answer is that it will actually pick the New York shard. The reason why it picks the New York shard is it looks at the lower boundary here, 150, and checks to see which one of the max values in the range, which one of these is it closest to. Now, in this case, it's a very simple decision. 150 is closest to 200, further away from 300. So that's how it makes the decision. So the lower bound is the important part in terms of the actual chunk itself, and the upper bound of the shard range is the key for deciding which one of these competing tags will actually win for this kind of thing. Second caveat, the balancer only respects tags that you add for future balancing. So let's say you have a collection that you've decided you want to pin to a particular shard. You got shard 1, you got shard 2, you got shard 3, and there's 32 chunks here, 31 chunks here, and 32 chunks here for this particular collection that we're talking about. Now you've decided that you want to actually pin that collection to just shards 1 and 2. So you go through, you do the exercise, and you tag all of these ranges. Got 95 chunks, you go in, you tag them all, either shard 1 or shard 2. You then leave it for half an hour, you come back and you run your sh.status again, and strangely enough, nothing's happened here. The balance remains exactly the same, everything is still on shard 3. And the reason why that's the case is the balancer considers this a balanced collection. It'll only respect the tags for a future balancing round. So in other words, first of all, this is going to have to get unbalanced for the balancer to even kick in and consider it for migrations. And then we'll only balance until it gets them balanced again. So it's a little bit tricky here. How do you actually get these 32 into the 2 shards? Well, one is you can just wait. Eventually, if you're writing constantly to all of these chunks, splits will happen, balancing will happen, and gradually things will move off of shard 3. But that could take a very long time. So if this is the case and you want to get this sorted out more quickly, then you have to manually move the chunks. So again, if you're going to manually move the chunks, a couple of things that you're going to want to do. I'll do a really quick example on a single chunk. Here's the move chunk helper. sh move chunk running without parentheses tells you what it's actually going to do. It's going to run the admin command move chunk, and it's going to require the full name of the chunk or the find, and then the destination shard. Now the one that we're going to move the chunk with this object ID in it, and we're going to move it from rs0 to rs1, and this is in the shardtest.foo namespace. So there we go. We've moved a chunk in the shardtest.foo namespace. The ID, we just took it straight out of the range. So you can see how it would be very easy to pull these object IDs or whatever your shard key happens to be out of the config.chunks collection and programmatically do this. You just have to iterate through each one and move them to where you want them to be. So that's what we've done here. We've moved it, the chunk with corresponding object ID to be found here from rs0 where it was. We've asked for it to be moved to test-rs1. It took just short of 4 seconds and it completed successfully. Now before you go and do a large amount of these, again you're going to want to stop the balancer. Didn't have to do it on this in this instance because this is a test setup. There wasn't any traffic going on at the time, so this has succeeded. But if you're going to be doing a lot of manual moves, similar to if you're going to be doing a lot of manual splits, you're going to want to stop the balancer so that you don't have anything else competing for that exclusive lock. Remember, only one migration can be active at a time, whether you're initiating it or the balancer is. So there you go. Stop the balancer, do your move chunks, and you'll be able to achieve the balance that you want and get these 32 chunks moved and split across these two for a 48-47 split, or whatever the actual balance ends up being. And as a general recommendation, as we did at the start and as we've kind of been saying throughout this, if you've pre-split the data, or you've got well-defined boundaries for your ranges, and you're going to have a much easier time of this. So consider the implications beforehand, pre-split if possible, and then when you are pre-splitting, split on the tag boundaries that you require.